All right, so today we're diving into a case well, it's really captured the public's imagination for years, the disappearance of Maura Murray.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one.
We're going to be looking at some newspaper articles, actually,
Oh, interesting.
from a special report published back in 2007 by the Hanson Express.
Okay.
And, these articles offer like a really kind of a snapshot of the early investigation.
Right, right. Just a few years after she vanished.
Exactly. So almost like we're getting a time capsule.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. A time capsule of the investigation. I like that.
So maybe to start, can you give us a little background on Maura Murray?
Sure. So Maura was a 21-year-old nursing student
Okay.
at UMass Amherst. She was an athlete, described as kind of shy and a high achiever. Really seemed like she had a bright future ahead of her.
Yeah, it's interesting. The articles really emphasize her close relationship with her family.
Yes, especially her father, Fred.
Uh-huh.
It seems their bond was pretty central to the events that led up to her disappearance.
Yeah. And they went car shopping together, like just days before she disappeared.
Right. Maura was trying to, I think, replace her old Saturn, which was having some issues.
Mm-hmm.
It might seem like a small detail, but it adds another layer to this whole mystery.
Well, yeah, was she preparing for a fresh start? Like, was there something else going on?
Exactly. Something prompting her to get a new car.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. And then there's the car accident.
Oh, yes. While driving her father's car.
Right.
That accident, it seems, really had a big impact on her. Left her in a pretty fragile emotional state.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if that event maybe combined with other struggles she might have been facing.
Absolutely. Could have contributed to her actions.
So let's move to Monday, February 9th, 2004, the day Maura disappeared. And there's just a lot of activity that day.
It really does seem like she was meticulously getting ready to leave,
Right.
packing her belongings, emailed her professors, her employer, saying there was a death in the family, which wasn't true.
Wow.
Withdrew money, bought alcohol,
Okay.
even picked up accident forms.
Oh, wow.
The articles detail internet searches for directions, phone calls to a condo rental
Really?
in New Hampshire,
Okay.
specifically the Bartlett area, and even to that 1-800-GOSS-DOE number.
Oh, wow. That's the central, reservation line for lodging in Stowe, Vermont.
Exactly. So definitely evidence of planning.
Wow, that's a lot of activity for one day. She was taking steps to leave.
Right. But the mystery is, where was she going?
Mm-hmm.
And why this sudden trip? While there's planning, there's no clear indication of her destination or reason.
Yeah, the articles mentioned some phone calls to her boyfriend, Billy. He was an Army lieutenant stationed in Oklahoma.
Right, but even those conversations don't fully reveal her mindset. It's unclear.
So planned departure, unclear purpose. Was she running? Was there something or someone she was trying to escape?
Those are the big questions that investigators have been asking from the very beginning. And then, of course, there's the accident later that evening.
The accident on Route 112 in Woodsville, New Hampshire.
Yes.
What do we need to know about that?
Well, her Saturn was found facing the wrong way. Airbags deployed, windshield cracked.
Okay.
It was just after 7 p.m, already dark. But the weather was relatively mild,
Yeah.
For February in New Hampshire.
Right. And then this is where those conflicting witness statements come in, right?
Yeah, that's right.
The articles mention a few people who saw her at the accident scene.
Yes. So we have Faith Westman, a local who initially reported seeing a man smoking in Maura's car, but later said it could have been a woman on a cell phone.
Okay.
Then there's Butch Atwood, the bus driver who stopped to help.
Yeah.
He spoke with Maura, who said she called AAA,
Uh-huh.
but then he called the police himself when he realized the car was still there.
So you have these different accounts, but none of them really tell us what happened to her or where she went.
It's true, and it makes it so perplexing. Then there are the Merritts, who lived nearby and saw the scene from their house. They reported the car's lights flickering, which adds another detail to the timeline.
So she vanishes.
It's like she vanished into thin air, leaving behind all these unanswered questions.
And it all happens so fast, right?
So quickly.
The time between the last sighting and the realization that she's gone it's just incredibly short.
I know, it's frustrating. And despite these different accounts, no one reported seeing anyone else near the car or seeing her leave. Her disappearance, well, it's just shrouded in mystery.
So it starts with this seemingly planned departure, a car accident, conflicting witness statements, and ends with her disappearance all in a very short time frame. It's like the perfect recipe for a cold case.
You could say that it's like a complex puzzle but with some of the most crucial pieces missing.
So then, how did the initial investigation go? What steps did they take to find her?
Well, there was a big search launched immediately. Police, family, friends, volunteers, everyone was looking for her. Helicopters, canine units, extensive ground searches. But the terrain, the weather, it made things really difficult.
I can imagine that lack of progress just added to the anxiety.
Absolutely. And Maura's family, especially her father, Fred, grew impatient with the lack of answers. Their frustration was made worse because Maura was initially classified as a missing person, not a victim of a crime,
Right.
which meant federal agencies, like the FBI, couldn't really get involved.
So, as the days went by, no sign of Maura, what theories were people coming up with?
Well, there was a lot of speculation. Some thought she might have been suicidal, staged the accident, and disappeared intentionally. Others thought she ran away, wanted a fresh start, or was escaping some unknown problem. And then, of course, there was the theory that she was abducted.
Right, at the scene or shortly after. It seems like with a case like this, that lack of evidence, it just leads to endless speculation.
It's true. And in Maura's case, the mystery was even more complicated by some of the details,
Yeah.
like the bloodhound evidence.
Oh,
The dogs tracked her scent eastward from the car for about 100 yards, and then it just stopped.
so what does that tell us?
Did she get into another car? Was she trying to find a house with a phone or better cell reception? It's hard to say.
It seems like every piece of evidence just leads to more questions.
That's the nature of this case. And then there's that mysterious phone call her boyfriend, Billy Rausch, got while he was at the airport. The articles suggest it might have been from Maura using a calling card, but even that is surrounded by conflicting information.
It's just a frustrating situation for everyone.
Absolutely.
So we have this web of events, conflicting statements, a missing person, and a family desperate for answers.
It's a lot to unpack.
Sounds like we're about to dive into some of the later developments in this case.
Yeah, we're just getting started.
So much to think about. Where do we go from here? Like, what happened after those initial weeks? Any new leads come up?
Well, one person that really stands out is Fred Murray, Maura's father. The articles, they really portray him as just unwavering in his determination to find his daughter.
Yeah.
You know, he did his own searches,
Wow.
just tirelessly pursued any lead. And often he was at odds with law enforcement
Oh, really?
over how they were handling the investigation.
I bet that was frustrating.
Oh, incredibly so.
Like feeling like you have to take matters into your own hands.
Right.
So what did he actually do?
Well, Fred, he connected with a group called the New Hampshire League of Investigators.
Okay.
And these are volunteers, often retired law enforcement
Oh, okay.
or legal professionals, who basically, they dedicate their time to looking at cold cases
Wow.
and help families like Maura's.
So they brought fresh eyes to the investigation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
New perspectives,
Yeah.
conducted their own searches, and really, went over all of the existing evidence.
That must have been really helpful for Fred.
I'm sure it was.
Did their involvement lead to anything?
Well, their efforts, it led them to focus on this one location,
Mm.
an A-frame house,
Oh, okay.
not far from where Maura's car was found.
Uh-huh.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The articles mention that they brought in cadaver dogs.
Hold on. For those of us who aren't familiar, can you explain what a cadaver dog is?
Yeah.
And why this is significant?
Sure. So cadaver dogs, they're specially trained
Okay.
to detect human remains.
Gotcha.
They have an incredibly sensitive sense of smell,
Wow.
and they can pick up the scent of decomposition even years later.
Oh, wow.
So the fact that they got multiple hits at this A-frame house,
Okay.
specifically in a downstairs closet, was pretty significant.
Yeah.
Could this be where Maura was taken? Was there evidence hidden there?
Uh,
Potentially pointing to foul play.
it sounds like a huge breakthrough.
It does, doesn't it?
Did they find anything in the house?
Well, this is where it gets frustrating again. Investigators took carpet samples from that closet
Right.
where the dogs reacted to test for any remains or other evidence.
Makes sense.
But the information about those samples and what the tests showed, it gets really murky.
Murky, how so? What happened to them?
Well, that's the big question. There's a lot of confusion. Who had them?
Right.
Were they ever tested properly? Were there any results?
Huh.
And this lack of clarity, it just fuels more speculation. Conspiracy theories.
Oh, wow.
Some believe the samples were mishandled or even suppressed
Really?
to protect someone
Wow.
who might be involved.
That's a disturbing thought. I can see why Fred would be distrustful of the investigation at that point.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This uncertainty around a potentially crucial piece of evidence,
Yeah.
it just adds another layer of frustration.
To an already, heartbreaking situation.
Exactly.
Did Fred take any legal action to try and figure this out?
He did. He was frustrated.
Yeah.
And he felt like law enforcement was stonewalling.
Okay.
So he filed the lawsuit
Wow.
against the New Hampshire State Police and other agencies to get access to their files. He thought that maybe reviewing those records would give him some answers, crucial information that had been overlooked or withheld.
That's a bold move. Sounds like he was willing to do whatever it took to find out what happened. Did it work? Did he get to see the records?
Well, the legal battle, it went on for a while. I'm not sure what the final outcome was.
Yeah.
But, it highlights how far Fred was willing to go
Right.
to get answers. And that tension that sometimes exists between families who just want closure and, law enforcement,
Yeah.
bound by rules and protocols.
It's a tough spot for everyone. Were there any other developments? What about those sightings? I know the articles mention some alleged sightings of Moore.
Oh, yeah, the sightings. Over the years, there have been a lot of people who claim they saw her.
Right.
One account places her at a church in Vermont.
Okay.
Another says she was being held captive at a convenience store in New Hampshire.
Oh, wow.
Someone even reported seeing her walking down a road in a dress.
So all these different places.
Right. It's like she became this, like a ghost,
Yeah.
a figment of everyone's imagination.
Yeah.
So many possibilities, but none of them led anywhere.
It's almost like a collective hope that she's still out there.
It's common in these cases.
Right.
People want to believe,
Yeah.
want to offer hope. Maybe they're looking for a connection to the mystery themselves.
Sure.
But most of the time, these sightings, they're just cases of mistaken identity or wishful thinking.
So despite everything, the efforts from Fred, the New Hampshire League, the A-frame, the sightings, Maura's disappearance remains unsolved.
That's the frustrating part. The case went cold,
Yeah.
leaving so many questions unanswered.
Right.
But, even though the official investigation might have stalled, the public, they never lost interest.
Yeah, it's a case that sticks with you.
It does.
You keep asking, what if?
Right.
What if those clues had been interpreted differently? What if the samples were analyzed properly? What if one of those sightings was actually her?
It really makes you think. Even with all the technology, all the forensic science we have today,
Yeah.
some mysteries, they stay unsolved.
So we've covered a lot, but I feel like we're just scratching the surface here. It's interesting how every piece of information, it just brings up more questions than answers. Like, the more we learn, the deeper the mystery gets.
That's a really good point. And
Yeah.
it's what makes this case so fascinating. We're left to deal with the unknown, trying to piece together these fragments and make sense of something that just doesn't have an easy explanation.
So where do we go from here? What happens next in Maura's story?
I don't know. That's the big question, isn't it?
Feels like we've hit a wall. Like, does the story just end there? No resolution?
Not necessarily. I mean, the official investigation may have slowed down,
Right.
but the search for answers, that doesn't have to stop. And that's what's so interesting about this case.
Yeah.
It keeps people engaged. It inspires them to, look deeper.
Right. Like we said, it's not just a story. It's an active investigation. And it benefits from fresh eyes, new insights.
Exactly. And there are resources for anyone who wants to learn more or even contribute to the search. The website dedicated to Maura's disappearance is a great place to start.
I was on that website, actually, while we were prepping for this.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. Photos, timelines, police reports. There are even forum discussions where people share their theories. It's a digital detective's dream.
I know. It's incredible how technology can keep these cases in the public eye and maybe even generate new leads.
Right.
You never know. Someone could be on that website reading those forums,
Yeah.
and they might have that one piece of information, that missing link.
Right, the thing that unlocks the whole thing. It's a really fascinating thought. Like, maybe someone listening right now remembers something from back then, a detail they didn't think was important at the time.
Right.
They saw a car, overheard a conversation, something that could be relevant now.
Even the smallest thing,
Yeah.
something that seemed insignificant, it could be crucial in a case like this.
Mm.
And, even if you're not the type to dig through forums or police reports, just keeping her story alive, talking about it, sharing it with people,
Right.
that can make a difference.
It's like that saying, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. We can't let Maura's case be met with indifference.
Exactly. Awareness and discussion are so important. And for anyone who's really hooked on this case, who wants to understand all the details, explore the different theories, there are so many resources online, podcasts, documentaries, communities, all dedicated to figuring out what happened.
Well, this deep dive has been a roller coaster for sure. Sadness for Maura and her family, frustration with the lack of answers, but also a bit of hope that maybe someone listening can help bring some resolution.
You know, what strikes me is how this case challenges us to really think, to question what we assume, and to never stop searching for the truth, even when it seems impossible.
So we're at the end of our deep dive, but I feel like for a lot of our listeners, this is just the beginning.
Probably.
What would you say to someone who's now totally hooked on this case and wants to go even deeper?
I'd say check out all the information online. Engage with those communities dedicated to Maura, maybe even form your own theories. This is a case that really makes you think critically, analyze, speculate.
So, a final thought for our listeners. Based on what we've talked about today,
Yeah.
what do you think happened to Maura Murray?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Come share them on our forum. Keep exploring those resources.
Right.
And most importantly, keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
And let's not forget the human side of this. Keep Maura's memory alive.
And hold on to hope that someday the mystery will be solved. It would bring closure to her family and peace to all those who've been touched by her story.
Until next time, keep diving deep.